Welcome to the deep dive. We dig into the sources so you don't have to. Today, we're tackling something a lot of young scientists, and probably their families too, believe pretty strongly. That getting that PhD, being really smart, having great technical skills, well, that's your guaranteed ticket to a successful science career. Sounds right, doesn't it? You put in the work, get the degree, success follows. But the reality we're diving into today, it's maybe not quite like that. A successful career is actually far from assured.
Exactly. And that's why we're looking at Peter J. Feibelman's book, A PhD is Not Enough.
Okay.
It's not just, academic theory. Feibelman really tries to lay out a rational path for a research career. He points out that grad school often doesn't teach you the career stuff. And finding a really good mentor, that can be tough, honestly. So this book kind of steps in to fill that gap.
You know, what really struck me is his own story. He says he came out of grad school basically clueless about how to survive in science, almost had to tell his parents the golden boy thing wasn't quite working out, found himself, I think he says, in a muddle at 28, even after all that education and postdoc work. Doesn't that just make his advice feel, well, more grounded?
Oh, absolutely. It hits differently, doesn't it? He's not just talking at you from some high pedestal. He's lived it. It really backs up the whole idea that these survival skills aren't things you're born with. You have to learn them, sometimes the hard way. Gives the book real weight, I think.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. Figuring out what these essential survival skills actually are. Feibelman's book is like having a pocket mentor, especially if you aren't lucky enough to find a real one early on. It's about seeing the obstacles coming, before they trip you up. Okay, let's get into it. How can you actually use all that brain power to build a science career that, well, works?
Right, so Feibelman kicks things off talking about a mistake he made early on. He was technique-oriented, not problem-oriented. Basically, he did the work assigned, but he admits he didn't really grasp why it mattered or if it was even, cutting-edge stuff.
And the result? 7 papers, 7 different fields, no real focus. He called his own talks a hodgepodge.
Yeah, a hodgepodge. That sounds familiar, maybe. Is that a common trap for bright young researchers, just focusing on the skill we've mastered? I think it really is. It's easy to just, keep doing the thing you're good at, the technique, rather than stepping back and asking, what's the big question here?
Yeah.
And yeah, it leads exactly to that kind of scattered output. Looks busy, but maybe doesn't tell a clear story.
Which leads to this aha moment he had, thanks to a mentor he calls C. C basically told him straight up his seminar was just that, a hodgepodge. No theme, no real meaning to anyone outside his narrow little specialty. Ouch.
Tough feedback. But wow, probably necessary. And C's advice wasn't just give better talks. It was a whole shift in thinking, right?
Yep.
About your entire contribution.
Totally. Moving from just being a skilled pair of hands to being a storyteller, like you said. C's advice was pretty clear. First, have a theme, a story. Like, don't just dive into the data. Explain why the sky is blue first. The big...
Simple analogy, but it really clicks. Think about the why.
Right. Second, structure your talk. Give context, history, the main problems, then talk about your work, your results, and how they actually advanced our understanding. Make it absorbing. And third, practice. Rehearse with your peers. Get feedback. Because your future, as T apparently put it, depends on the strong recommendations of your senior colleagues. It's not just solo work.
And the impact for Feibelman wasn't just better seminars. He said he learned what it means to be a scientist. By making his work make sense to others, it started making more sense, becoming more compelling to himself, too. It's about finding that purpose in your own research effort, not just ticking boxes, that internal drive.
Yeah, which brings us to this whole theme in the book about know thyself, and maybe more importantly, dealing with the sometimes harsh realities of science life.
And he doesn't just say it, he shows it. These little stories, vignettes, he calls them. They're like cautionary tales, really vivid.
They really are. Like T, the guy in Timing is Everything. Postdoc gets obsessed with one big, long-term project. Utterly single-minded. Didn't network, didn't do any short-term stuff. So come job time. Nobody knew him. He had nothing finished, just promises. Employers saw him as a pig in a poke.
Yeah, that's a tough lesson. And Feibelman really drives it home. As a young scientist, you have to look out for yourself, your own best interests. That means getting things finished, published, building connections, not just pleasing your advisor with some massive project that won't pay off until long after you need a job. You need results now.
Then there's B. The story, a sweet job turns sour. Top PhD, gets a permanent lab job, great, right. But he refuses training, wants to be independent now, totally unmentored, fails to get a research program going, gets moved out of research, even his marriage breaks up around the same time. Just shows the danger of ignoring mentorship and, well, reality.
In age. Wow. Impressing mom and dad. Chose a fancy assistant professorship mainly to impress her professor dad. Paid a huge price, he says. 16-hour days, no life, marriage falls apart. All for that romantic notion when maybe an industry or government job would have been a smarter, less painful way to build reputation first. Very human stories.
They really hammer home Feibelman's point here, don't they? It's not just about being smart or skilled. It's about understanding the game, understanding yourself, and making rational choices about the realities you're facing. Strategic self-awareness, basically.
Okay, so we've talked about the internal stuff, mindset, self-awareness. Crucial, but that's only part of it. What about the big external choices, like who you work with? Let's start with mentors. Choosing an advisor.
Right. And Feibelman has some pretty direct advice here. He strongly suggests picking a prominent established professor, someone with tenure, over young assistant professor. His logic is pretty down to earth. Established profs are plugged into the networks, the old boy network as he calls it, though maybe we just say established networks now. They can help you out if things get rough. That makes sense. They have influence, connections.
Exactly. And maybe more importantly, they're generally not competing with you for recognition. They tend to view their student successes with pride, even joy. Whereas a young advisor, they're still trying to make their own mark. They might be, as Feibelman puts it, underably leery of being shown up by a star student. Could be a trickier dynamic.
But it's not just about how famous they are, right? He adds some nuance there, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You also need to ask, are they actually available? Can they give real guidance, especially to beginners? Does their research group feel like it has a purpose? Do people actually talk to each other? And importantly, do they teach those survival skills we're talking about, the soft skills, the mentorship quality that matters just as much as their scientific reputation?
Okay, so moving on. Postdocs. What's the deal from the other side, the employer's perspective?
Feibelman is pretty blunt here. He says, look, employers often see postdocs as, well, cheap labor, minimal benefits, not a huge commitment because you're probably gone in 2-4 years. What makes you look like a good bet to them? A great thesis talk, finishing your PhD on time, showing you're serious, knowledgeable, engaged, interactive, showing potential.
Right. So flipping that back around, what does that mean for you as the postdoc? What are your main jobs during that time?
He lays out 3 key tasks. 1, figure out what area of science you want to make your name in. 2, finish at least one significant project, get something out the door. And 3, build your identity in the wider research community. Make connections so you can actually land that next job. Time is really tight during a postdoc.
So how do you actually succeed? What are the keys?
Okay, keys to success, according to Feibelman. Number 1, echoing the last point, finish something. Get results you can talk about when job hunting. This might mean, and this is tough, sacrificing your desire for perfection. A good, provocative story with plausible evidence is better than a perfect but unfinished project. He introduces this neat idea of a poublon, like a quantum of publication. Think in terms of publishable units.
A poublon. I like that. Small, achievable chunks. What's the second key?
Second key, make yourself known and useful. Don't just be a slave to your advisor's project. Your goal is to get strong recommendation letters from maybe 3 or 4 senior people where you work. How? You got to barge into people's labs, politely of course. Ask questions, offer help, be visible, be interactive. Actively build that network.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The big fork in the road for many. Academia or going into an industrial or government lab.
Yeah, the classic choice. Feibelman gives what he calls an unsentimental comparison. Academia, sure, you've got potential perks. Academic freedom, tenure eventually, maybe consulting, sabbaticals, respect in the community.
Yeah.
The dream, right. But lots of downsides too. Professors often don't do much hands-on research themselves anymore. It's mostly vicarious. The hours are insane, way more than 8 hours a day. Constant funding pressure, your university salary might only cover 9 months, plus dealing with stressful student issues, cheating, broken stuff, complaints. And he specifically warns about the assistant professor track, says it has most of the disadvantages and few of the benefits early on.
Wow, okay. That's quite the reality check compared to the ivory tower image. What about the other side, industry or government labs?
Well, tenure might be less common, but Feibelman argues your real job security comes from your reputation among peers worldwide anyway. The benefits there. Often a clearer job description focus on the science, access to cutting-edge equipment, more reasonable hours usually, a more managed environment with support staff, IT, libraries, maybe merit pay, often more collaborative. Downsides exist too, of course. Priorities can change suddenly based on corporate or government whims, mandatory training courses, maybe heavy-handed managers. And the big one, your work might be proprietary or classified, meaning you can't publish it easily, which hurts your external reputation.
What about salary? How do they compare?
Generally, university pay starts lower, but a top, well-funded professor can potentially earn a lot more. He mentions ratios like 3.1 or even 4.1 between highest and lowest academic salaries. Industry and government labs, usually narrower salary bands, maybe less than 2.1. To really max out your earnings there, you often have to move into management.
So given all that, what does Feibelman see as the smartest path, his optimal career trajectory?
His advice is pretty strategic. First, go build a strong scientific reputation, working 8 hours a day at a commercial or government lab. Get established, get known, without the intense pressure of early academia. Then, he says, if that is still what you want, make the move to a university, ideally as a full professor, coming in with clout, rather than starting at the bottom of the academic ladder.
It's fascinating how much emphasis he puts on communication. It's like doing great science isn't enough. You absolutely have to be able to talk about it and write about it effectively.
Totally. It's a core skill. When he talks about giving talks, he uses this great analogy that scientist is showman. Your talk is a performance, a one-person show. People come expecting a story, he says. Something with a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's got to engage them.
And he gives some solid practical tips, like never overestimate your audience. Even the experts appreciate hearing things explained clearly, things they can easily grasp. Your introduction is key. It sets the tone. Show you know the field, you're curious, you enjoy it, and you have something useful to share. And importantly, hint at your main conclusions early on. Don't bury the lead.
Right, give them a reason to keep listening. A roadmap almost.
Exactly. Then there's stagecraft, project confidence, enthusiasm, even practice how to handle those aggressive questioners, the inquisitors you sometimes get. And plan a modular talk, maybe 6 or 7 slides for a short 10-minute talk, so you can easily cut a section if you're running out of time. Super practical advice.
And here's a specific point I found interesting. He advises against using outline slides. Those slides that just list intro, methods, results, conclusion. He argues the structure should feel organic, invisible, like a good story doesn't start with a plot summary. Let it flow naturally. Acknowledge your collaborators on the title slide, sure, but don't waste time reading out a list of names. Focus on the content.
What about the slides themselves, the look and feel? He has some interesting thoughts there too, right? About not being too spiffy.
Yeah, it's that reverse snobism thing he mentions. For a scientific audience, he suggests the slides looking too slick, too polished, might actually backfire. It can almost suggest you care more about presentation than substance. Weird, maybe, but could be true in some circles. His advice, keep it simple. A figure or two, a cartoon, simple text, clean, clear, big fonts so everyone can read, lots of white space, clarity over flashiness.
Makes sense. Okay, let's move from talking to writing. Writing papers, publishing without perishing. He frames papers as timeless advertisements for yourself, your public record.
And his core strategy here goes back to timing and that Publon idea. Plan your research as a series of shorter, complete projects. Why? It keeps your name out there consistently, reduces the chance of getting scooped on one giant project. And frankly, writing shorter papers is just easier than tackling some massive monograph. Small, steady wins.
He suggests modeling papers after news articles. What does he mean by that practically?
Well, think about how news works. The title is like the headline. Succinct description of what is noteworthy, packed with keywords. The abstract is the lead paragraph. Summarizes the main findings, the key results, the methods used, all super concisely, maybe 75 words. That abstract travels far and wide. It's crucial. And the introduction, that's where you tell your story, explain the why. Why was this work important? What difference did the results make? He even says, start thinking about the intro right when you begin the project, not just at the end. And please, avoid cliches like, recently there has been a resurgence of interest in bear. Yes. And a couple of other key points on writing. Cite your competitors properly. They really care about getting credit. Be honest about what's proven versus what's just speculation. That's intellectual honesty, he says.
Right. And he gives you an out if your idea turns out wrong later. Transparency is key. Also, get colleagues to read your drafts before you submit, especially if English isn't your first language. And see referee comments not as attacks, but as free advice on how to make your paper clearer for everyone. It's constructive, ultimately. All right, let's tackle what Feibelman calls the bane of scientific life for so many. getting funded. Super important for your wallet and often just necessary to do the work, even in national labs sometimes.
Yeah, the funding game. His advice, start early. Like prepare your first grant proposal, or at least the basic outline, before you even start your university job. Maybe even draft it during the interview process. Shows you're serious and ready to hit the ground running.
Okay, so what makes a good proposal? What are reviewers looking for?
It needs to convince them your work is important and timely, and that you actually have the resources and ability to deliver on what you promise. Be realistic, he says. Modest in your promises. Distinguish between the dream goal, pie in the sky, and what you can likely achieve in the 2-3 year grant period. Definitely include some projects that are already well underway so you can show some quick results. And cite the literature generously. It shows, the field, and it, well, flatters your potential competitors who might be reviewing it. He also addresses that sometimes idealistic view some scientists have about where funding comes from, being reluctant to take money from, say, the Department of Defense or drug companies.
Right, preferring NSF or NIH as pure sources?
Feibelman's take is very pragmatic. He basically says, look, if the money funds the research you want to do, then questioning the agency's motives is probably unwise. He argues taxpayers mostly fund science out of practical concerns. Fear, greed, he calls it things like defense, health, the economy. Not necessarily out of a pure love for arcane theories. It's a bit cynical, maybe, but perhaps realistic.
That's definitely a direct perspective. He also makes the point that getting the grant doesn't mean you're locked into a bad path.
Right,
Sure.
exactly. Your proposal needs to make sense, show a plan. But if the science leads you elsewhere, if a path proves false, you follow the science. A grant isn't handcuffs. It's about picking good problems and showing you're making progress.
Okay, closely related to funding. Establishing a research program. This requires, as he puts it, a cold-blooded analysis of your capabilities. Be realistic about what you can do.
And this loops back to being problem-oriented, not technique-oriented. Don't let yourself become just the person who runs the fancy machine. That machine might become obsolete. Focus on the scientific questions you can lead on.
Right. You want to be seen as a scientific leader, not just a technical specialist. And again, timing is critical here, especially early on.
Definitely. That 2-year postdoc should not be starting a 2-year project on day one. You need short-term publishable output. Simple as that. And if your advisor pushes you towards a long-term, high-risk project that won't yield results soon enough, his advice is blunt. Seek a different group. Protect your own career timeline.
He also talks about the strategy of working on more than one project at a time. Why is that so important?
Several reasons. 1, if a project gets stuck, you don't waste time. You just switch focus to another one. 2, it allows you to tackle those big long-term goals alongside shorter ones. Like Feibelman himself, spending 10 years on a complex program, but keeping papers coming out by spending maybe half his time on quicker projects. 3, it makes you broader scientifically, ideas can cross-pollinate. And 4, if you get scooped on one project, it doesn't sink your whole ship. It's like diversifying your scientific portfolio.
Portfolio management for science. Love it. How do you actually establish a name for yourself amidst all this?
Be the sole author sometimes, if possible. Or, in collaborations, make sure you're seen as contributing the core new ideas, maybe as the key theorist or conceptual leader, not just the person running the experiment someone else designed. Show intellectual leadership.
And he wraps up this section with a really punchy line. No one ever got ahead in science by saving money. What's the thinking there?
It's about investing in your research, in your goals. Asking for the resources you need shows ambition, shows you're serious. Funders, he suggests, are more likely to back someone who aims high and invests in their own success, rather than someone who's constantly trying to cut corners. Ambition gets rewarded.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. The big takeaway from our deep dive today seems clear, that PhD, it's a fantastic start, a necessary foundation, but building a truly successful, fulfilling career in science takes way more than just being smart and good in the lab. It requires deliberately cultivating these survival skills, strategy, communication, knowing yourself, being pragmatic.
Absolutely. And that's where Feibelman's survival checklist idea comes in handy. He looks at it from a behaviorist viewpoint, meaning these aren't mystical talents. They are behaviors you can consciously learn and practice. You don't have to wait to learn them through painful, maybe career-ending mistakes. As he puts it, it's far better to learn from the bad experiences of others than from your own. Learn proactively.
So for you listening, what are the crucial actions? Things like really putting yourself in the shoes of your audience, whether you're giving a talk, writing a paper, or interviewing for a job. It's about getting your priorities straight, Knowing what your real job is at each stage, like for a postdoc, it's getting published, not necessarily writing grants yet. And maybe hardest of all, learning when to say no to things that pull you off track.
Which really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Given all these insights from Feibelman about navigating the realities of science, what specific behaviors, what strategic choices are you going to prioritize starting now to make sure you don't just survive, but actually thrive and leave your mark on your field?